I am from small town way upstate New York. Myths and legends basically create themselves. One night, friends and I decide that we're going to venture out to this abandoned farmstead where supposedly a triple murder occurred. Typical high school teens with nothing to do sort of shit. So we load up an SUV and track out. Place is wicked remote, nothing but the smell of cow shit and dirt, definitely no cell service. So we get there, place is super eerie. It's about 10:30 p.m., car headlights only thing illuminating the house and barn area. It's set away back off the road, so there are no streetlights to be seen. The house itself was nothing special. In fact, it appeared that someone had been dumping their garbage inside for years. Classic scumbag move. The barn was a whole different story. Flashlights in hand, we entered the front door. The inside was filled with junk, but it was bizarrely organized, as if corridors were established. We started to explore. Myself and a friend went up some stairs at the entrance to the hayloft. This is where things took a fucking weird turn. At the top of the stairs began row after row of corn husks sharpened into spears, like to a ridiculous fine point. The husks were everywhere, as far in as we could see. We started to enter the maze, but then we heard a shriek from the ground level. A female friend and her sister had ventured farther into the barn. We went down and found them in a junk corridor surrounded with small handmade idols, I mean hundreds of them, each one with a twisted body and deformed face. In a panic, they told us they heard someone else in the barn. We told them to relax, we would have heard another vehicle pull up. But as we made for the front door of the barn, we heard a noise from the back half. In the light of our headlights, we could clearly see a man standing in the back of the barn. He didn't move or speak to us, just stood watching. We bolted for our cars. If he followed us, I wouldn't have known. There was no way in hell I was turning to find out. Never been back. Spookiest thing that ever happened to me on a Friday 13th was when I was like 11. My friend had just moved house, and she said her new house was haunted. I was a kid who was super into supernatural/paranormal and fantasy. But by this point, I was already starting to turn skeptic. But I mostly kept that to myself, because it was fun to pretend I still believed. Anyway, it was a Friday, and for some reason, my friend's whole family except her were out of the house for a few hours, and she invited me over to house sit with her. I can't remember if I spent the night. I think I did. We thought it would be fun to watch one of those ghost hunt shows, and at the part where fucking Derek Acra was asking for the ghosts to come out, my friend's video player turned on and started rewinding itself. This was a time before that shit was automated, and theirs was old. You had to rewind it yourself by pressing the button on the controller, and the controller was on top of the video player, so it wasn't my friend fucking with me. Scared the shit out of us. But other than that, she's told me how other creepy things had been happening, like her sisters hearing someone whispering their name into their ears, and a clothes hanger being thrown across the room from the side of the room where no one was, and other things like that. I consider myself a skeptic today, but that still always creeps me out, because I was there, and my friend wasn't the kind of person to make stuff up. I think she was like me, skeptic, but still found it fun to talk about. Spookiest thing that has ever happened to me is back when I was 16, me and my friend was hanging playing video games. Mom came back, had a little too much to drink, and went to bed. Whatever. Seems normal. So here's why shit starts getting weird. I got a message from my mom, and it said, "Hurry. Something bad is going to happen." A. I'm like, huh, weird, whatever though, put my phone back down. I get another message about 2 minutes later. Hurry, gun, under, pillow. So this time a red flag appeared, and I'm okay, let's go check this out. Went into the room, looked under the pillow, and bam, gun, locked and loaded. Well, I'm like, that's weird. Took the gun with me, unloaded it, and took it apart. About 5 minutes later, get another message saying, you might have won the battle, but the war isn't over. Here, life is mine tonight. By this point, I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? Go back to my mom's room, wake her up, asked why she's being weird and scary, doesn't know what I'm talking about. So I thought, I'll fucking hide your phone under the bed, and just to be safe, I'll take it the board, so she'll have no idea. But surely the fuck enough, get another message saying, necklace, choking, hurry, A. Go in there and my mom has her rosary wrapped around her and the Christ pulled off, squeezing it in her left hand so hard it was bleeding. So I woke her up and tried to explain what happened, but she was still drunk, so it didn't make a difference. I was curious about her phone, so I checked, and lo and behold, it's still there, like nothing happened. Well, I grabbed her phone and tried to look at the messages, but they weren't there, like none of them were on her phone. Fast forward the next day, explaining everything to my mom and showed her the messages, and she starts crying. So the messages that ended with A, my mom thinks it was her firstborn that died, since her name was Amethyst. Freaky shit, though.
My friends and I used to camp a lot in the El Dorado National Forest. We had a spot along Sopiago Springs we used to camp at a lot. One weekend, we decided to go for a 3-day foraging camp. We brought in MREs in case we couldn't find anything, some guns, and some supplies to set up shelter, but that's about it. First night was chill. We cooked a bunch of crawdads and a squirrel my buddy shot, drank a few beers we'd brought, and slept fine. Next day, something felt off to me. One of my friends who was with me and I had had some really creepy experiences in this part of the forest in the past, and it felt a bit like those. Forest was dead silent, and you felt like something was watching you. I grew up in the woods, so I know the signs of a predator, but this felt different than a bear or a mountain lion. When night fell, my friends went 200 yards or so up the stream to do some stuff, and I was alone in camp. The feeling got even stronger, so I built up the fire nice and big and grabbed a gun. I kept hearing faint voices from the woods in the opposite direction of where my friends went. They were low, indistinct sounds, but they were creeping me out majorly, and my buddies had taken the only 2 flashlights, poor planning in hindsight. As I peered out into the darkness, I caught a glimpse of something moving 50 yards or so out in the trees. I snapped the rifle to my shoulder and got the scope on it. It was pretty dark, and the only light was from the fire, but I could see the outline of what I was aiming at. It looked human, but was on all 4s, and its arms seemed a lot longer than they should. It stood a bit like an ape, but very low to the ground. I only saw it for a second before it loped off deeper into the woods. After I lost track of it, I'd hear light rustling in different directions around the camp, leaves scuffling, the occasional twig breaking, always away from where my friends went, in the 180% on the other side of the camp from their departure. I got the sense that whatever it was stalking me. I kept the fire high and was staying sharp, looking out into the woods, but I didn't see it again. My buddies came back about 10 minutes later to find me a paranoid wreck glassing the tree line with the scope. I told them what happened, and they got quiet, then told me the reason they came back when they did is they started hearing the same shit I did over by where they were at, and it spooked them. We spent the second night of our trip with a big-ass fire and 3 lookouts. Nobody slept that night. In the morning, we broke camp as quick as we could and hightailed it out of there. We never camped in that spot again.
Solo, backpacked into the middle of nowhere, Mogollon Rim. This was in high-elevation, very wet Arizona, and not the desert most people are familiar with. Around 7,500 feet, and the area looks more like the wet areas of the Pacific Northwest than anything else. Super remote. Remote enough that I didn't see another soul, and saw evidence of old pot grows, all several years old, and nothing recent, thankfully. Pot growers can be dangerous if you stumble into one of their illegal little farms. The first night, I camped on an almost flat bench of ground above a creek. A bench in this context is a large ledge of ground. The bench was about the size of a large living room. I had a brush-covered cliff behind me, impossible to move around on without making noise, and a sheer undercut by past floods drop-off to the creek in front of me. Other than the faint sound of trickling water, it was a dead quiet night. The kind of night you can literally hear a mouse scurrying around in the undergrowth. It was utterly, absolutely quiet. And it was overcast on a new moon, so absolutely dark. The area was heavily overgrown with thorny bushes, wild strawberries, and ferns. There was a thick canopy of trees overhead, so thick I had a hard time getting a signal out with my satellite communicator to report in to family. I messaged them every evening when hiking alone. The only way up to the bench was a narrow, steep game trail, that through thick brush. You couldn't get up to that bench without making a ton of noise by knocking rocks loose and breaking branches. Did I mention it was quiet? It was spooky quiet. No birds during the day, no frogs peeping, no crickets or cicadas, nothing. Dead quiet, except for that faint sound of trickling water. It was the kind of quiet where the loudest noise is the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears. In the middle of the night, a bright white light illuminates my tent for a couple minutes. I figured I had a human midnight visitor, possibly up to no good, and I scrambled out of my tent in a hurry. The light disappeared as I unzipped the tent. It's still absolutely dead quiet. I shine my very good flashlight around and find nothing. No humans. I listen with the light off and hear nothing. And then, off through the trees, I see a faint flickering white light. It isn't a flashlight. It's more like a glow. Had it not been so very dark, I might not have seen anything at all. On a moonlit night, I might have thought it was a particularly bright patch of moonlight. It disappeared after a minute. There was no sound, and I would have heard footsteps if it was anything alive. I was just glad it wasn't an axe murderer, an illegal pot grower, or space aliens. I sat up until dawn, and there were no other noises. It remained eerily silent, not even a cricket. In the morning, there were no footprints and no sign anyone had been there. The dawn birds never sang as the sun started to come up. There never were any insect noises. I vowed never to camp on that creepy bench again.